Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today we have Nick Manzek as our guest. Nick is one of the co-founders of Elomia, AI specifically designed for mental health. He studied mechanical engineering at the University of Michigan and has over 8 years of experience building and scaling seed through Series B startups. He got into the mental health space after seeing the positive effects doing this work had in his life, and he saw that AI was a way to increase access to it for the world. In his free time, he enjoys staying active outside in Southern California with beach volleyball, surfing, and snowboarding. In this upcoming podcast episode, Nick explains that Elomia's AI-powered chatbot offers support to people who can't get human therapy due to stigma, cost, or availability, serving as a supplement to traditional therapy rather than a replacement. He addresses how Elomia ensures safety and privacy, differentiating its mental health specific AI from general purpose AI like ChatGPT. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's get into it.
All right. Hey, Nick.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? So thank you for joining me today. Now, tell us a little bit about Elomia.
Yes. Elomia as a company has been researching at the intersection of AI and mental health since 2019. And the goal has always been to increase the access and availability to quality mental health support. And so right now, Elomia is a AI-powered chatbot that individuals can use whenever they can't get access to human support due to stigma, availability, cost reasons, to just allow them to work on some of the challenges or issues they face in their life, right from the comfort of their own homes. So you can download Elomia on the app stores, or we're starting to work with more and more organizations who are integrating our AI via API or different platform ways into allowing their people to use it.
Okay, that's cool. That's awesome. Now, you talked about human interaction. What people often wonder if AI can truly replicate the human connection of a therapist. How do you see that what do you see as the fundamental difference between the AI like Elomia and the human therapist, particularly with like empathy and rapport?
Yeah, I mean that's I think a massive question. And I think it'll change. The answer to that will change over time as the technology changes as well.
Right.
First off, we'll talk just how it is at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can talk if we want to on where it might go in the future. But right now, AI is definitely not a replacement for human support, nor does it need to be, nor are we trying to make it. Right now, we're actually seeing human users go to AI and go to something like therapy with a human therapist for totally different use cases.
Okay.
It's not, humans don't seem to be thinking, do I want a human therapist or do I want an AI? They actually go to them for, like I said, different reasons. And it's usually because they can spend a lot more time with the AI, diving deeper, learning more things, going on tangents. And then it's the opportunity of the AI to make sure that it can field those directions properly and safely and make sure the conversation still stays in a place that's effective and useful for the individual. So we can kind of talk about different models. But as far as like empathy, the AI is really good right now at following different patterns. So if the AI is trained properly, it can't offer something that feels relatively empathetic to a user. Again, we can talk about, is that true empathy on the AI's part? Currently, no. AIs
Mhm.
cannot feel empathy. But the question also comes up, does that matter if the end goal is does the human user feel that they're getting a sense of empathy and it's helping them out in their current situation?
Right. So can you give an example of what a use case would be for the AI, like a user asking the AI therapist, what kind of use case do you usually see? Like what kind of questions do they talk about? Like what is like, do they go on the app and like, well, I'm having a problem today. How do I address this problem? Or is that more a human therapist question, or can they do also that with the AI therapist?
Yeah. And I'll just clarify. So our AI is not a therapist. We make sure that our users understand that. And that's how we describe it as well. But the conversations tend to be similar to the ones that they have with their therapist or they would have with a therapist.
Hmm.
And they're just talking to the AI about what's going on in their life. We have a few different users. I mean, we have many users, but sometimes the users will be in therapy and they just can't access their therapist 24/7 or between sessions. And so they have the ability to then talk to Elomia.
Okay.
And we tend to see, and they tell us that the advice they get from Elomia is similar to the advice they get from their therapist. So it ends up just being an extension. If someone's in therapy, it can just be an extension of the work they're doing and a little bit of reinforcement and just a little bit of support in between when they can get direct access
Okay.
to
Okay.
a therapist.
Okay. I see that. I can see the difference now. Thank you.
Yeah.
So ChatGPT has made AI conversational tools mainstream. What are the key distinctions between the general purpose AI like ChatGPT and Elomia, which is specifically trained for mental health support?
Yeah, it's a great question and an important one. So I'll take it a little further back just to kind of talk about these large language models. That's the
Mhm.
technology behind ChatGPT and how they work. And right when they first got released, there were those kind of hallucination artifacts, like the model scraping the whole internet. And the one famous one I remember is the model was recommending people to put super glue on pizza because there
Mm.
was a joke comment in a Reddit thread that the AI had in its training data. And so that's a hallucination that most people could see that doesn't make much sense. And all of those kind of, I call them sillier hallucinations, have basically gone away. The models have improved so much. But now you start to see different artifacts that the models have. The one is the sycophantic conversation. So always agreeing with the user is an artifact, which is harder to tell now. It's not as easy to detect when that's happening. And with regards to like a mental health context, for example, agreeing with the user for everything they say might not be helpful and it might be actually harmful.
Mhm.
And so the difference between, ChatGPT and Elomia is we use those general large language models to help the conversation be natural and human-like. But where the conversation goes and the questions it asks, and also the guardrails we have in place to check user messages and also check AI messages going out are
Mhm.
what allows the conversation to be safe and effective in a mental health context. So we can talk about how our AI has been trained, but we use frameworks of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and some of the subsets to build the conversation. And then the patterns it's looking at and the questions it's asking are what's going to differ it from kind of ChatGPT taking the conversation anywhere. It's a very pointed and structured conversation that's free flowing, but designed to bring the user to a better mental state and make sure it doesn't go in a negative direction or harmful direction.
Now, you emphasize on the safety aspect, right? And what specific measures and protocols have you implemented to ensure the user data privacy and to handle high risk conversations like self harm?
Yeah. So I kind of see this two places. The data privacy is, I see it as like, how do we store the data? What makes sure that this sensitive data isn't getting out or getting into the wrong places? And so the important but maybe boring side is we've got agreements signed with all our AI vendors that they can't train or store the data. Essentially just use it, process it, and then it gets deleted. That's the same thing we do with our organizations as well that work with us. We sign agreements that, again, lets us process it, but doesn't let us save or train our models on that data. The other side of like actually keeping a user safe while they're engaging in the conversation has a couple parts. The main part, again, is how our clinicians have designed our model to work and behave. And the other part are kind of the guardrails and policy checks that we have in place that then read every single user message to understand whether this person is talking about self-harm, suicide ideation, harm of others. And then if that happens to be detected, we let them know that Elomia in its current form is not a substitution for live human support. And then we direct them to appropriate resources.
Okay.
That's for individuals using it. For organizations, we can kind of kick off different workflows that might notify certain people. But if it's just an individual, we don't take any action on their behalf at the moment.
Okay.
We are developing some different crisis models, and so that might change. The other piece of the safety side is then, so that's looking at the user messages. We also want to look at each AI message that's potentially going back to a user, and that gets checked against a bunch of policies as well to make sure that message isn't saying anything, again, harmful, incorrect, or otherwise not in the direction the conversation should be going. So those two pieces, user side, AI side,
Okay.
and then the data are kind of what we would recommend anyone working in this space, in the AI mental health space, to have in place.
That's pretty cool. Now, let's dive a little bit deeper on your personal side.
Sure.
So, on your career path has gone from engineering to creative agency and now into the mental health AI space, right? What was the catalyst for you that made that huge shift? And what personal experience fueled that passion for you?
Yeah, I have changed careers probably about 4 times already now, and I laugh because I think it's maybe a lot. And part of that is my whole mental health journey. I think I was, sometimes changing for the wrong reasons, sometimes changing for the right reasons, but always following what I was most interested in working on next. And I was doing software sales for early stage startups for about the last 4 or 5 years before getting laid off, and I wasn't able to find a job. And so it kind of forced me to sit down and think about what I really want to work on. And this was about the time ChatGPT came out and about the time where I really started diving deeper into my mental health, my journey, and seeing the positive effects that had in my life, and thought, I think AI might be able to help people with some of this. It doesn't have to be the answer for everything, but can it help a little part of someone's journey? I think the answer, and I was curious if the answer was yes. I thought it could be yes. And that made me want to explore it further. And so I started looking at different companies in the space, tried different apps. And the conversation I had with Elomia a couple years ago was more impressive than any other app I had tested, and started going back and forth with the rest of the founding team. And they needed some of the expertise that I had on the B2B sales side and product management. And so that's how I got involved. And it's been a really awesome journey since.
That's pretty amazing. So being, um, entrepreneur and going through this mental health journey, what are some of the things that you've been using to help? Like what strategies are you using or routines maybe to help you with your stress levels and your own mental health state?
Yeah. I was actually thinking about this maybe last month, just reflecting on entrepreneurship versus being an employee, say. And I don't think the day-to-day work is necessarily harder. I think but I do think is extra strain, at least there has been on my mental side. I was trying to figure out where that comes from. And I think it just comes from not everything is perfectly laid out. There's not always a clear path. And so there's a little bit of murkiness in the decisions you're making. And if they're the right decisions or the wrong decisions, and when you might even know the answer, whether they're right or wrong. So that uncertainty, I think, is what has been a learning experience for me. And the way I try and handle that is stay in good, healthy routines. So for me, it's kind of like I'm not one of those biohackers that tries to optimize every little thing. I try and get the big pillars right. It's kind of what I stick to. So sleep is a big one. I need 8 hours just about every night. I start to get a little off, we'll say. And then exercise and moving my body is another pillar. So, try to work out 4 or 5 times a week in the gym, or doing activities like I live in Southern California. So surfing, golf when I can, beach volleyball, help to keep my routine regular. And then also just kind of listening to the body. And I get better at this as I go on. But I think it's important to push on, in certain times when you need to get things done. But there's also times when I think it is important to just take a step back and rest. And so, yeah, I think, again, I'm trying to do this sustainably so I can work on Elomia for a long, long time. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that structure that just feels like I could work on it for years and years and years, and it's not leading to burnout, is where I'm trying to, position my wellness side.
Yeah. I mean, I try to do the same. So totally understand the pillars. Now, lessons from podcasting. So before Elomia, you had an extensive experience in podcasting and storytelling. How has that background helped you in communications and narrative shape how you approach building the conversational AI and explaining it, you know, the complex purpose to the public?
I think that there's a couple pieces as far as like the product side and what we're building. I think what you learn and what you're doing on this podcast is being curious and asking questions and trying to really understand me or what I know, my situation. It's the same thing that I do and my team does when we're talking to users, talking to organizations. We're really trying to learn the problems they're trying to solve, the issues they face, why what they're currently doing might not be working. The more creative or the more curious you can be, and the more you kind of secret insights you can uncover, the better chance you have at building something that's really, really meaningful and helpful for people. So that's the one side of it. The storytelling is an interesting piece. I think I like to get better and better each time. And again, I come from some of the sales side. So There's always a term, storytelling sells. And so I think it's a useful skill to be able to find the interesting pieces and build I like to call it a satisfying story, like a beginning, a middle, and end. Something that has a little bit of tension, has some unknowns that you're sprinkling in there, and then bringing it to a close with a really satisfying payoff is what I'll call it. And I think you can do that in little bits, like, just describing a story, or when you tell about the whole arc of something, can you make it enjoyable to listen to? And then also kind of sprinkle in those insights. So maybe a little vague there, but yeah, I think the more you can do these things, almost do them on calls with customers, do them on calls with users, it just makes the whole experience, I think, more enjoyable for everyone.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, looking ahead, where do you see the field of AI powered mental health support to be in the next 5 to 10 years? What's your ultimate hope for Elomia's impact on a global scale?
I'll say it again, our goal is not to replace therapists.
Mhm.
As I see it right now, there's so many gaps in the mental health space where people aren't getting care or they're not getting appropriate care, where I think AI can help fit in. And I'm really interested in fixing those gaps before we ever get to the conversation of, does AI need to replace therapists? And I don't think it does. And so I'll get more concrete. So I see therapy being a great place for individuals, like individuals in treatment, to work through something. And then I see AI fitting in really well, potentially pre-therapy. So I've had people in my life that have told me that they were talking to ChatGPT one night and they learned some things about themselves, and ChatGPT suggested therapy as a way to dive deeper and solve some of these some of these issues more fully, and they actually got into therapy and making really good progress. So AI, almost a first step into someone's mental health journey. I think it's a lighter place to go for a lot of people. It's not as serious. They can still start to engage and potentially type or say something that they've never said out loud to anything else. Like, that's a big step for people. So I see it being very useful at the beginning to start someone's journey. I also see it, again, someone gets into therapy as a way to extend the work they're doing in session. Again, not a replacement, not something totally different. We're working with different therapists to figure out ways to extend that care and just make progress happen quicker or reinforce progress that's happening. And then after therapy, I see it as almost a good fit for a maintenance type tool where they've learned lots of concepts, they've learned things about themselves. Can they continue to reinforce those with something that's maybe a little less expensive, a little less intrusive to their day-to-day, but can still help them on their journey? So, like, those are the big pieces. I think there's also some interesting pieces on the efficiency side for therapists, and like the system as it is to help keep therapists motivated, help keep clients motivated, potentially take away some of the administrative burden. And you'll see that with a lot of the AI note-taking apps.
Mhm.
But yeah, big on gaps. And then just finally answer the last question. I really like the Duolingo model where it's free for the whole world to learn a new language. And then the richer countries pay the premium subscription to keep the service alive for everyone. And I think as AI costs drop over the next 2 to 3 years, definitely, 5 to 10 years, it'll be closer to typical software costs. And then we can offer a freemium model. And then someone that's never going to get access to a therapist,
Can have
for
that.
those cost reasons, can get something pretty useful for them. So that's again, that's why we created this company, to give people access if they can't access anything else. And I think that future will become a reality in the next few years.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So you did say, the gap. Can you describe from your perspective what makes it AI a unique, sustainable tool to fill it?
I think it's an interesting conversation because I don't think you can argue with the fact that AI can be very, very readily available at a pretty low cost. As far as, like, you can talk to AI for an hour and it might cost $1 or less than $1, versus talking to a therapist for an hour
Mhm.
is many hundreds of times more than that. The conversation then goes to, what is the quality of care you can get for the hour with a therapist and the hour with an AI? And I think that's the right conversation to have. And I think the gap and opportunity is that you could potentially give really, really good support, really, really good conversation through the AI for the people that aren't ready for whatever reason, aren't able to get therapist care, and then kind of allow them to select a level of care from there. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's called a step care model. And I think for like one more specific example is men are typically less likely to go to human therapy than women. I think the number is 70%. Traditionally, 70% of clients in therapy are women, 30% are men. We actually see the users of our app skewing 50-50 men and women. So there's no skew, which just a quick look at that data would say that AI might be a place where men are more comfortable going for this type of conversation than traditional therapy. And again, I see that as a stepping stone. I think it can be a doorway into higher levels of care. So that's one gap
Hmm.
just off the top of the head that I think I can help with.
Yeah, I think also that I've done some research on like, like while looking for a therapist, you see more female therapists, right? And then, a man talking to a female, it's a little harder, I would say. I personally, I would want to talk to a female as a female, right? And so I'm making an assumptions that a male would want to talk to a male. Yeah, with the gap where even in the human side, the human therapist, if there's less male therapists, then that helps fill a little bit of that gap there for males.
Yeah, and I'll even take it a step further where say it's, AI can fill that initial gap and then there becomes more males that want to get into therapy that want male therapists. And then there becomes another gap on the human therapist side of the market where the market's then asking for more therapists, more male therapists. And that likely will create more male therapists. If there's a need there, it'll likely get filled by more people being interested or availability coming up. So I really do. I talk on LinkedIn a lot about AI and mental health. And some people they believe there's a competition between AI and human care, but I really think AI can be additive. I actually don't think it's a competition at all.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like for anything for I think is like you said, is additive and not not competition. So like even copy, right? Like if you write a copy, yes, you have the AI that helps you with the copy and writes whatever you need to write, let's say a LinkedIn post, but you can add your own spin to it. But prior to that, you still have to say, hey, LinkedIn, hey, ChatGPT, this is what I want to write, make it better, right? So then that's what I usually do. That's an example of how I use AI. So, sometimes I have an idea, but I get stuck in the formulation of the copy. So I'm like, well, let me use AI to help me with that, with the formulation. So here's the idea, what I want to say. And then after that, ChatGPT or Gemini helps me with create a better version of it. But it's not like it's replacing my thought, is helping me elaborate what I want to say.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think recently I've been thinking about someone asked, do we think that AI use is going to atrophy the critical thinking muscle in humans? And I thought that was an interesting question. And I tried to use my personal experience to figure out, what the reality of that might be. And I've been using a lot of the AI code tools. Cursor is one of my favorites. And the AI is writing a lot of the code. And so I'm not thinking critically on the exact characters I need to put in to write these lines of code. But I still am thinking critically on what I need to be telling the AI to get done and also how I'm structuring this task kind of high level, what I'm actually trying to have the program that I'm getting the AI to write to do. And so as at least for now, I believe that the critical thinking isn't going away. It's just moving to a higher level in the process.
Yeah, I think it's more like the different critical thinking. Like, what are you thinking about? Like you said, like you are no longer thinking about how to critically do your coding. You're more so thinking about how do I tell the AI tool to do it for me? Like, how specifically? Like earlier, I was trying to do a presentation and, I had to tell AI, well, I wanted it to be a different color and where I wanted it to be a different color and so on and so forth. I'm like, okay, well, let me ask it if it's possible to do. And if it is, then great, right? If not, then I'll have to do it myself. But it was able to do it for me. So I was like, yay. But, like
Exactly.
it's not like, it's not really replacing my critical thinking. It's just changing what I'm critical thinking about. So now this is a question that I ask all my guests. If you had a superpower, realistic or not realistic, what would it be?
The first one that comes to mind, I think, would just be to be able to fly. The other day I was sitting on the beach and I was actually surfing. I was in the water and this group of seagulls just kind of came by and they were just floating amongst the wave. They dived down over a crest into a trough, and it just looked like a fun way to see the world. So maybe not the most useful all the time, but I think it'd be pretty cool to be able to fly.
Yeah, it would be. Because if you are at the beach and you want to go home, you just
I've
fly
got a
away.
big hill to walk up every time I need to go from the beach to my house. So if I could just fly up, it'd
Yeah,
be a
so
little easier.
yeah, and then you can fly down and dive into the water and have your surfboard with you. I'm like, wee.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it'd be crazy I'm sure like walking for us, the amount of energy that takes is what it feels like for some birds to fly. That's got to be a pretty surreal feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Nick. And thank you to the viewers. I see you next time. Bye.
Yeah, thanks then.